can use this, and this is really targeted at developers. Sorry, I was just got a message that I was being recorded. So this is being recorded as well. But yeah, today is for primarily targeting developers, but this is a knowledge sharing event, and Domos together with the Kamara project is organizing. So we have a quite full agenda today. So first, the Kamara project will have a couple of sessions. So that will be from Alicia Miller and Jill Lovato. First session before a break, and Marcus will take it the next session. Then another break. Then we have a set of companies who are discussing different things. So among others, Domos and Nokia and Cable Labs and Broadpeak, Microsoft and Intel. So I think I will just, we have a busy schedule, so I will just get started. So first, like some practicality. So I'm a moderator. Call myself an AI hipster, but that really means I learned about it 2 years ago. And I realized people have been doing this for 15, 20 years, but that goes well with what hipsters typically do. So after each talk, there will be a short Q&A. So please put your question into the Q&A button at that Zoom provides. And all talks are recorded and will be published on the website. So with no further ado, I want to introduce Jill Lovato and Alicia Miller. So Jill, Kamara Project and Linux Foundation, Alicia, Kamara Project, and Verizon. And I'll give it to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Magnus. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Jill Lovato. I work for the Linux Foundation. I am a director of outreach and communications, and I lead a lot of that strategy across the foundation's networking projects, and that includes Kamara. I've been with the LF for about 8 or 9 years now, and before that I worked with Microsoft. Alicia?
Thanks, Jill. And I don't know, I can't see anyone else's video, so I'm just seeing myself, which is really fun. There we go. That's lovely. Hi, everyone. Alicia Miller. I work at Verizon. I'm in the corporate strategy team, really focused on these interoperable network APIs. I've been working with GSMA and Open Gateway and Kamara Foundation for the last couple of years in this area, and really work back also with the internal teams that are productizing this. I also own the hyperscaler relationships for Verizon for these APIs, so I get to work with Ricardo a lot.
Great. So Alicia, I think you had the first section of presentation.
You're on mute now, Alicia.
Yes, I think that's correct. If you could flash up those topics again, Magnus, that would be great. I was going to make this hopefully a bit more interactive than just kind of me talking at everybody. So, and I've got a couple of slides here for these, but let me start with that first topic. So what is the benefit for developers to use the APIs? So this is really about unlocking scale for developers, and scale's really unlocked when you've got these interoperable APIs and you can just put one line of code in your application and use that over and over and over again across hundreds of telcos globally. So that's really the benefit of kind of the interoperability portion of the APIs. The other benefit is now you can access telco network information in a way that you have never been able to before. You can we've got Number Verify and SIM swap as kind of these first two, but these are really accessible in an easier way through an API than they have been in the past. I'm going to pull up kind of one or two slides here in 1 second, but just giving kind of an overview. So for the potential use cases, it's really, really broad, and it obviously depends on the APIs. Where we are all targeting right now is all these anti-fraud use cases. And oops, with these Number Verify and SIM-Swap APIs. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, can you allow me to share my screen, Magnus?
I can. Sorry about that.
I'm going to bring up some more of these use cases and use case areas here.
You should be able to share screen, but
yes, now I can. Great. So you can see I was talking about these anti-fraud use cases up on this upper right, where you can see that they're really focused on SIM swap device status number verification. There's also a ton of other types of use cases depending on the API that you're going to use. So on the left hand, you've got network data, and the use cases that the APIs here that are supported are listed, but there's a lot of use cases. You can have network aware advertisements, video optimization. You can kind of really focus on making your traffic flow the best that it can. We've got device specific, device focused APIs here. Device status that talks about, is your device roaming? Is it connected to data? Is it connected just for SMS? Video and app optimization, and then subscription based application optimization that you can do. Network aware video optimization is really going to take advantage of not only the network data APIs here, but also the device focused ones. And then everyone's favorite, network slicing, which is coming for across, telcos globally. But that's also going to be the exciting thing about that is it's going to be accessible via APIs. You're going to see the different slices available, and you're going to be able to control kind of how your data maps to that slicing. So it's all about giving developers more control over consuming network data, network information rather, and then getting that kind of device information and really using that in a really easy and seamless way. I also want to talk about the different API families here that Kamara is working on. And these are families, they're called families because they contain multiple APIs sometimes. So we've got the ones that are really focused on here, device status, SIM swap, and then number verification is also over here. That's what's being focused on kind of globally. In other pockets of the world, you've got different carriers that are kind of farther ahead on other APIs. So for example, in Europe, we're seeing a lot of QoD use cases coming out and POCs coming out, and they're really focused on that. And then in Asia, you've got also kind of other focus areas around all those same ones, but kind of they're a little bit more experienced, have been doing this maybe a little bit longer, and are all coming onto the Kamara standards as well. So you'll see kind of different variations across geographies as well. And then the other one that I love to call out is this edge cloud. If you're using any sort of edge computing, there's a few APIs in this particular family that are going to really help you access those edge nodes more seamlessly. So for example, the simple edge discovery API or edge discovery service API, as Verizon calls it, discovers the closest, edge location to the end user. And this isn't just like the physically closest one, it's the one that's going to give you the closest from a network perspective. So these are all the ones that are currently being worked on. They have different dates of availability. They're in different kind of phases of that development. And you can see these and kind of you can access all the information around these, the definitions, specifications, where everything is on the Kamara GitHub as well. I think I hit all those points, Magnus. You're on mute. Oh.
Sorry about that. those are your points. Maybe we can, I'll see if there are some questions on the way, and I'll just stop you, but maybe we can hand it over to Jill and we can do the questions after Jill, and then I can ask some questions as well.
The questions are my favorite part. So please, if you guys have this is my little shout out. If you guys have questions, please ask them. I would rather have a conversation than talk at everyone. So put those in the Q&A.
Yeah, one of the questions that have come up is, okay, so there's slicing APIs and quality on demand APIs and kind of how these relate to different QoS and whatnot. Could you get like a bit into that? Like, how are these different? What do they do?
The question's kind of like, how are QOD and slicing different from one another?
Yeah, and what can you do with each of them? What are the use cases? Like, let's tie it back to the use cases.
Yeah, so I think the way we're thinking about QOD is it's a little bit of a precursor to network slicing. They're different. They're different technologies that are actually kind of setting these parameters. So for QOD, you're using QCI, a particular QCI. For network slicing, you need 5G standalone. The differences are that a slice is going to be kind of, at least at the beginning, I think it will become more dynamic as we progress, but slice is going to be kind of a preset set of requirements that you have for the network, and it's going to be preset for a specific type of traffic. So there are some slices that are definitely for, targeting lower latency or higher bandwidth or lower jitter, but there's also slices that are going to be targeted towards devices that don't need a lot of bandwidth. And it's really a more efficient way to kind of manage your traffic. Whereas quality on demand is going to be one of those things that it's literally on demand. It's in the name. So you're going to say, for this period of time, or like, I want to start this QOD session now. So you make the QOD call, you specify your parameters, and then you end that session. And so network slicing is a little bit different. I think it's going to be more for some of those industrial use cases. It's going to be really applicable in places where you've got like maybe a fixed point, right? It's like some mobility use cases, but some kind of like more fixed use cases. QOD, I think, is going to be you're going to see that a lot more on the mobility use cases versus network slicing. I hope that answers the question. These are also still really, really, really new. And these are also still new at Verizon. So that's my perspective for where we're at today.
Yeah. And that was perfect. Now we have quite a few questions more coming in. So one more. So 70-80% of data is on Wi-Fi. What happens to these API calls in that situation? I know, like, both myself and Paul Fonte from CableLabs will talk about this later in much more detail, but I still want to give you the question as it has been asked.
Yeah, it's a good question because it is definitely coming up a lot. We are exploring how to make the API calls work over Wi-Fi, but they will. It's just a matter of, and there are standards on how to make those happen. So, for example, there's VoIP, VoIP standards, like a voice call over Wi-Fi, standards for how do you get from Wi-Fi to then an LTE call. So we're exploring how to make these particular APIs work over Wi-Fi, but it is absolutely something that we're hearing a lot of customers ask about, that they want those use cases as well.
Yeah, and then just following up from that, so the similar question becomes like, hey, so some things can just be done on 5G SA, some things on alt or any 5G, and some things maybe on 4G and earlier versions as well, right? So like, how do you, as a developer, how should you go about this and think about this?
So I think as a developer, it shouldn't matter, because the operators are the ones taking care of this. So slicing can only happen on 5G standalone. So you won't even see it unless and until there is 5G standalone. at least you won't see it commercially available. If you're doing a proof of concept, you're going to be working, hand in hand with the telco, and they're going to give you all the information you need. There's also certain devices are going to be accessing or provisioned on either the 4G core or the 5G core. And that's going to also be different per carrier, right? So in the US, Verizon, we're still transitioning to the 5G standalone. And so devices are being provisioned on 5G standalone, and there's still devices on the 4G core. So you'll see that, but it's really more for the telco to worry about how are we going to implement this and then make this available to everyone. We want to make this seamless for developers so that it shouldn't matter you should be able to use whatever is going to be available commercially.
Yeah, so basically it ends up, if I understand correct, from a developer's point of view, you are simply asking the operator or an aggregator for which APIs are available for me, and you'll get that list. And if slicing is on that list, you can use it. If it's not, you can't use it, right?
There may be T's and C's that say, okay, this works in this area or it doesn't. So you should, read those if you get them. But I think that's generally the consensus, is we want to make it seamless for the developer. So that should not be something that you have to worry about. There's a million questions. I love this.
There's a million questions. I'll just go to the next one. So what is the status of the connectivity inside APIs? Do you see operators implementing this? And I'll add my own little comment to this. Do you see there being, or how flexible would the connectivity inside APIs be, just relating to what we just talked about, different types of network, different capabilities and whatnot. So first, are they available? Will they be available? And how will they be? Will it be one standard or many?
So they're becoming available. So Verizon has Edge Discovery Service available today. You can Google it and find it. We're working on making the other ones available. It's also different in different regions. So for example, if you want to access consumers in Brazil has commercially launched, it's targeted also on anti-fraud use cases, but they've commercially launched Number Verify and SIM Swap, I believe, maybe also device status, but at least those first two. So that's commercially available in Brazil. Europe is at its own pace as well, and you'll see different countries going at different paces, somewhat because of different regulatory environments. But I think Europe also has a lot available. So Telefonica, I know, has a early adopter program where you can go and access these APIs and kind of test them out in that sort of way. And then I think you'll see as time progresses in the next 12 months, a lot more announcements about commercial availability of these APIs.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there in general about commercial availability, right? And that's it. I guess the answer is it's coming, different between different operator and different region and whatnot. And I guess you can only answer for Verizon and what is public, but yeah,
I'm trying to wear my Kamara and Verizon hat and talk about the ecosystem, because this is one of those interesting times when working in tandem is actually going to benefit everyone. And so trying to walk that line and promote the fight the good fight.
Yeah. No, that was actually my point going. I was gonna say it when we started. One of the reasons why Domus wanted to arrange this webinar and want to do it for you is hey, there is an opportunity here, but we need to work together to build good use cases, to build bigger stories, so that actually developers can go and make cool things, right? And that's the most important thing. It's less about fighting between operators and even vendors, and more about creating an ecosystem, right? So
right. And these API families that we're putting together, the idea with Kamara is that developers will be able to develop once and use it everywhere, so that they don't have to go and reconfigure what they're doing for each network operator in each country. So that's where we get the scalability option. That's where everybody works together, so that we adopt these, what we're calling standards, but I guess they're more like blueprints or templates that all of the participating networks and folks are going to be accepting into their protocols.
Exactly.
should
Yeah.
move to, oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we have one more question, like specifically around the web RTC API and use cases about this. So I figure I sneaked that one in as you were the use case guru, Alicia.
The use case guru for the APIs that I am very familiar with. WebRTC is not one that I'm super familiar with. I'm gonna have to phone a friend and see if Marcus or Jill can talk about that one.
I'm going to pass that one to Marcus. I'm not familiar with RTC very, very much myself either.
So hello from my side. I'm also not familiar. So we have to take that question and clarify the background and answer them separately.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was one question that I did want to address about putting my Verizon hat on about QoD and net neutrality. Net neutrality is a concern in the US. The FTC has made some statements on it. For QoD specifically, they kicked the can down the road, so they haven't said one way or another what their feelings are on QoD, but it is net neutrality and QoD is a concern for Verizon. So Verizon does not have any commercial QoD available at this time.
Yeah, and I guess that there's one more question around this, which is what is typical pricing for QoD? Well, I guess you answered that from Verizon's point of view already.
We don't have it available.
Yeah.
I do believe that QoD is available on one of, I think, the Azure Programmable Connectivity Platform as a trial. I think it is in one particular geography, but don't quote me on that.
Okay, I'll just keep going. And Jill, you have to stop me when you have when you need your time to get
well,
to the next.
I do have one thing to add about QoD, and some of what I'm going to discuss and show you all in my portion of the presentation is where you can find which operators are using which APIs out in the marketplace. I know there are several that are implementing QoD live right now. I think most of them are in Europe, to Alicia's point earlier, but we'll go over that in a few minutes.
Yeah, and if you can make it in Europe, you can make it anywhere. Like we're the kings of regulatory compliance. That's what we're best at. So, next question. Where do you see most monetization potential for APIs? Is it B2B or B2C, and any specific reason why?
So I don't see consumers paying for the APIs. But if we're talking B2B2C, I think that's definitely a huge space. I think anti-fraud is one, and so that's why it's one of the top use cases that everyone globally seems to be focused on now is anti-fraud. So that's really mostly B2B2C as a use case. I think there are also B2B use cases. I think network slicing is one of those, which also kind of gets to a different topic on the network slicing APIs really are enabling another product versus our products in themselves, whereas QoD itself is a product. So I also want to make sure that we're thinking about these APIs as enablers most of the time, and they're supporting other products or they're helping to build other products. And so when we think about how to monetize them or like which have the biggest monetization potential, it's going to be really focused on what those use cases are and the value that the use cases bring. And then the APIs are really supporting those. So like anti-fraud is an example of that use case. In media and entertainment, you're going to have a bunch of different APIs also supporting that. Some are going to be kind of like QoD, some might be like slicing, and then you're going to have others that are really focused around the device or traffic management. So I think there's a ton in both B2B2C and B2B. I don't know where we're going to land on kind of which ends up being the bigger opportunity. I think it's going to depend on the use cases that these APIs are actually able to support and how we do that kind of in a new way.
Yeah, I guess fraud prevention is a good example. It's like it can be both B2B and B2B2C, but like what you call it depends on kind of like which angle you look at it from. Like as an employee of a company, I might need this service that make sure that I'm me and not some deep
Right.
fake version of me, right? So am I the consumer or is this the B2B? Like,
And you can also, companies could use that for monitoring on their own kind of employer reliable lines. They can certainly do that, or accessing any of those kind of more sensitive applications that they might have, especially like, I think like a mobile sales force is a really good example of where a company is going to be using these APIs for their own internal use. So I think they're definitely for both sides. I don't know where it's going to land on which is going to be bigger.
you're not going to make some bold prediction.
No, no. I'm not gonna say that
Okay.
there's gonna be $300 billion of revenue.
We'll leave
Of
that
the
to
three-
the analysts.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question here on interoperability and scale. So interoperability and scale rely on a common baseline of capabilities across multiple or even all operators. How will the industry address this? Is this through contractual terms, or is there some other approach?
Jill, maybe this is a good one for you to take from a Linux Foundation Kumara perspective.
Let me read through that again.
And then I can talk about from the Open Gateway perspective
Yeah.
as well. Was that a
Um,
question in the Q&A panel?
Yeah,
It
I'm looking.
was.
Where was the question? Sorry, there's so many. I'm trying.
Oh, here, was it from Ken?
Yeah, exactly.
10:15 a.m. Jill.
Interoperably and scale on a common baseline. That is a good question. We don't have a concrete answer for that. I think the hope is yes. I think that's sort of what we're trying to do with Kumara is the idea that we're standardizing the way that these APIs are being developed and made available to the market. That's sort of where GSMA comes in. They're really the marketplace. So what Kumara is doing, and this is actually probably a good segue into my portion of the webinar, is so what we're doing is we're providing the space for these APIs to be developed, tested, and defined, and then they're going to be made available through the GSMA marketplace. And so it's really just folks needing to work together, and in order to make this happen, people are going to have to collaborate, and people are going to have to come together and work with us, work with the GSMA sort of in tandem. And it's, yes, it is a little bit of an experiment, but there's a ton of opportunity here. And so we're really optimistic that things will start to pick up, and we'll see that support across the board.
I want to make one clarification that there is no GSMA marketplace. There's going to be lots of different marketplaces, but GSMA is not taking part in like creating a marketplace.
Correct. Sorry.
And then,
thank you.
No, that's okay. Just but that is because it's a confusing point for people. And I want to add to what Jill said, that Open Gateway is really kind of trying to take away the friction of the telcos working together on the non-API specification part, and Kumara is trying to enable that API specification development like holistically across all the telcos. So there's kind of that approach that's trying to get it from both angles, and both organizations work in tandem to kind of attack it from both sides. But that is like why we're also here and talking about why this is important, where we have to work the whole ecosystem together. Everyone has to do this together kind of at the same time for this to really work. And so that's why we're all here and talking about how great and exciting this is.
Yeah, because it kind of back to the business case. It's better for all operators if network APIs are a success story and you can monetize it, right? That is much better for every network operator than if it's not a success story and you keep fighting over some contracts, like how do you roam between A and B and who gets paid the most. Like if you work together, you can actually enable some use cases that wasn't possible before and get a lot more, right? You make the pot bigger instead of trying to get more of the pot.
Right.
But yeah, let me more questions here.
Go to Jill's portion and then come back to the rest of the questions.
Yeah.
It might answer, because I think it will answer some of the questions that I've seen people ask.
I think so too. And just before I launch into my slides, I did see a question here about aggregators, and the answer is yes. We are definitely trying to get the aggregators involved. They're a very important part of this ecosystem. So they're definitely on the radar, and we do have some already involved in what we're doing.
And I know 2 of them are speaking later today. So
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I think we've covered off on some of what I had planned to talk about, but kind of in a nutshell, what is Kamara? I think most of you are familiar enough that you're here on this webinar. I touched on it just a few minutes ago. Basically, we're an open source organization hosted by the Linux Foundation with the goal of harmonizing the network API development. We define, develop, test these API families and host sort of that neutral home to have that work done in a collaborative environment without vendor lock-in or trying to avoid any politics that comes with that. And as we mentioned, we work very closely with the GSMA and their Open Gateway platform to get these APIs out there. So at a high level, and we have gone over this already, but here are the main problems that Kamara is trying to solve. We're looking at scale, consistency, simplicity, accessibility, and then we also want to, bring in APIs that are, wrong way. Okay, sorry about that. Bring in APIs that are demanded by the market. So, we want to make sure that what is being developed and put out there is what people need and what the market is demanding. And to my point earlier, the idea is that these APIs families are enabling developers to build once and scale it across different networks and different countries so that they don't have to go back and redo their work or pick and choose which networks they want to work with because maybe they like developing for this platform better than the other one. This way you can just do it once and be done. So just a little bit of history about Kamara. We launched at Mobile World Congress Barcelona in 2022 with only 22 launch partners. It was a collaboration between the Linux Foundation and GSMA, and the idea was just to standardize developer-facing APIs. And here's a list of organizations that were with us when we launched. Fast forward to today, we now have over 100 named partners. 369 separate companies are participating in Kamara. We've got 27 active API families. Over 1,000 people are working with Kamara, and we have really established ourselves as the development home for GSMA's Open Gateway. So a little bit about our API families. Alicia touched on this, so we won't spend too much time here. And all of this information is available on our website, but here's just an overview of all of our families with short descriptions. We won't go through each of these, but there are quite a few. Some of these will be familiar, Alicia talked about. In addition to our API families, we also have working groups. So this is where you all can start getting involved. Each of these working groups, there's information on our website, and you can find out how to participate. So I did want to go into a little bit of detail about some of the more popular API families. I don't think we need to spend too much time on this. We sort of covered some of these in Alicia's section already, but as she mentioned, the anti-fraud stuff is really big. SIM-swap is huge. It's been really popular. It provides customers a way to get information on if somebody is trying to take over their information on their phone with the carrier. And here's just a handful of operators that have been deploying SIM-swap. Then we have QOD, which we talked about. Just to reiterate, this one involves latency, and it's really popular among use cases like connected cars, IoT, industrial IoT, drones, that sort of thing, where it's maybe not necessarily a traditional telco network, but you've got more sort of geographical and other devices beyond just your mobile phone. There's a use case here from DT about automated valet parking that's pretty cool if you have some time to dive into that one. And then number verification is another huge one. DT had a great example of reducing the clicks and saving time for the user so they don't have to do the one-time password verification. So that's saved people a lot of time, and it, lets customers verify that their phone number is connected to their device and their network. So if you have more questions about what's being deployed out there and what some of these look like in the real world, you can go to our resources page. The link is right here. There's a ton of examples, videos, presentations from different operators across the globe that are doing some of these things in real time. So I encourage you to check that out. And then now let's talk a little bit about how you actually get in to using Kamara APIs and how you can get involved in the community. So the first step, if you're interested in learning more or participating in an API family, is go to our website. If you see here at the top, these sub-project menus, these are our API families. So if you click on one of them here, we've highlighted this first one, A through H. The dropdown lists all of the API families in that category. And so let's pretend we clicked on QOD. This is what you're going to come to. It's just a web page with a lot of information, links of where to go to join meetings, statuses on the progress of the API, how to contribute and join mailing lists. There's also GitHub links here as well. And we have this information for each of the API families. I picked QOD because it's a little bit more mature, and so we have a little bit more information available. Some of these API families aren't quite this far in their life cycle, but there will be some information. So from here, if we want to click on the GitHub, this is where you end up. This is just, the main Kamara GitHub, and it's going to list all of your API families down here. You've got QOD on top, just in this screen grab. So if I click on that, that's going to take me to the QOD page. And again, there's all kinds of information here. You can get the code. You can go to the wiki page, find out when the meetings are, just dive in and just start contributing. There's no formal process to get involved. All of these links are public. Anyone can join the meetings. That's the beauty of open source. All of the information is out there, and we like to think it's pretty easy to find. We're working to make it a little bit even more user-friendly. So another place that you can find out information is the Open Gateway website. So if you go to this link here, it lists all of the different countries that have these APIs launched in their market. And so if you click on one of these, so I'm going to do an example. I'm going to click on Spain. So you click on Spain, you get a list here of all of the carriers that are deploying these API families. And it'll tell you which family they're in and then which API, and if it's launched and if it's certified. So for purposes of our demonstration here, let's pretend we click on Orange Developer Portal, and it's going to take us right here. These look a little bit different for each of the carriers, but this is really where you can find out information about working with the carrier directly on the API. A lot of these telcos have a ton of information here. So just click on them and scroll down, and you should have what you need to get started. If you're not finding anything, you can always reach out to us, to Kamara. You can ask questions on the GitHub. You can ask questions on the mailing list. There's lots of people around and ready to help and eager to bring more people into the fold. So that was kind of the overview that I wanted to talk about, and basically just getting started with Kamara and how you can jump in. So I think we can revert back to Q&A here. We did have a section here for potential new use cases. I don't know, Alicia, if you want to jump into that or if we should go back to the Q&A.
I think we can go back into the Q&A.
Yeah, so like I see most of the questions, or there's a lot of questions in the chat and some in the Q&A.
Yeah.
So please put it in the Q&A. So in the chat, because it's very difficult for us to keep tabs on them. So, but in the chat, there's a lot of questions around API discovery, right? So we kind of gotten a bit into it with aggregators, but basically the question is, do you have to like send some API request to every operator in the world to figure out if it's available?
So that is a multi-step answer, I think, to that question. The goal is to make it so that as a developer, you don't have to know which provider your customer is on. If like let's talk a B2B2C use case. Depending on how you buy the API will kind of make that difference. So in some ways, so if you buy from an aggregator, they're going to have the relationships either directly or indirectly with the different telcos to get those APIs. So for example, Vonage has made an announcement already. They've participated in a ton of announcements, made announcements, a lot of different partners. So I'll just use them as an example. Also, Verizon announced with Vonage, so they're like my favorite aggregator maybe right now. So they're going to have a bunch of telco APIs, and they're going to aggregate it like they would for any CPaaS API that you're familiar with today. So they're going to do that same aggregation, and they're going to tell you which networks you will be able to have access to. Then for the hyperscalers, so I'll take Microsoft, since I saw Ricardo on here a little bit ago. They've published a lot on their APC platform and how it will work, but you will be able to select. So you'll say, I want the SIM swap API, and then it will show you the telcos that have that API available, and you can select which telcos you want for that API and then the pricing and everything. So in one sense, you're going to get what is available, like from a Vonage or from, whatever they have access to. And in the other set, you're going to also, from the set that they have access to, you'll be able to pick and choose. So if you just want to work in the US, then you would just select the US operators from the APC platform. If you just wanted to work in Europe, you would select those operators. Whereas Vonage, you're going to probably just get access to the global ones. I don't know exactly what their offering is going to look like, but that's kind of how it's going to work. And then each one, so Vonage does its type of aggregation, and then Microsoft is also providing a level of aggregation as well.
I'll add one more thing to that. So Kevin Smith, who will speak at the next webinar, is the author of this, which is having a well-known URI and link to help discovery of these APIs. So there are work in the ITF as well to make this easier for developers. So you don't need an aggregator, but you can discover these APIs without the aggregator as well. So just a shout for that as well.
We're also working on a telco finder. But that will mostly be used by like the aggregators, the hyperscalers. So Kevin's approach might be something that you use though.
Yeah, we have a question here. How do I onboard as an aggregator? How do you become an aggregator? How do you do it?
How do you become, is that the question? How do you become, I see it in the chat. I want to make sure that that's what the question is how to become an aggregator, because I'm not an aggregator. And so I don't really, I don't think I can answer that question well.
I think that's it. So like what I would say is like, hey, you just start implementing all the APIs and start offering them to other developers.
You have to, so first you would have to contract with every single telco that you wanted the API from, right? So that's its whole process. That is not like, oh, I'm gonna get a standard agreement template and just do it. That it's not a standard agreement template as of today. At least from what I'm familiar with, I can speak from the Verizon perspective. So like if you wanted to be an aggregator for Verizon APIs, you would need to have a particular agreement with Verizon that we would, negotiate. And then you would have to go do that with every other telco that you wanted to have their APIs.
Do you see this as becoming something that could be a part of Komara, like having these open source templates for these relationships, or is that one step too far? Or what do you think?
That's what GSMA is working on through Open Gateway. We have these agreement templates, but I think, there's going to be with the larger operators, there's going to be variance from that template to what is actually used. I think it's a great help, and it will kind of further make things go a little bit quicker. We've talked about a lot of these issues as a group, like how do we solve for different things, what's actually expected, who is doing what. I think how does the relationship work, or how is it expected to work? That's a really important part that we've all kind of overcome through that process. But I think that it's not quite that easy to just copy and paste from one to another.
Makes sense. I'll just keep answering questions unless you stop me, Jill and Alicia. So, so there's a question here on Connectivity Insight, which, like, what is the latency? How long you have to wait? When is the time period for when you ask for this Connectivity Insight? So, for those who doesn't know, like, Connectivity Insight is like, how good is my connection, or give me some information about my connection that can be useful. So, you have an answer?
I think, yeah, so the roaming question is you would get that from the device status API versus the Connectivity Insights, but either way, I think what is important to know, so the exact latency number, I don't know. I've asked someone internally to see if they can tell me, but I don't have an answer yet. But these are not dynamic APIs that are just kind of open and you always, if like something changes on the device, you're going to get a notification. These are, you have to make the API request when you need that information. So if it changes and you make the request, then you should get that new information immediately, but it's not going to be, oh, as soon as the device goes into roaming, then you will get, you know, an automatic kind of notification. That's not how it works today.
Yeah, this is a good segue into another question I saw. So TM Forum, I lost the question, so I'm paraphrasing it now.
Jill answered it. I saw her typing to
it. Okay.
Yeah, Marcus is going to cover off a little bit more on that in the next section.
Okay, great. Okay, let me see. How will internal business units and operator access the API on their own network? And what about telco to telco, like wholesale API deals and QoD for roamers? Is this in scope of Kamara? What are your thoughts about it?
So this is similar to another question that I answered in the Q&A thing here, but so internal business units, like that's going to be up to each operator, right? Our APIs will be available internally to use as well, for sure. How that's done at every individual operator is going to be different and up to that operator. Telco to telco wholesale API deals. So this gets to East-West Federation, and that has not been fully defined yet. That's being worked on in GSMA and Open Gateway, but it's not been fully defined yet. So none of the APIs can work on roaming currently.
Okay. There's a question, can you have a view on Kamara APIs that are in roadmap? Jill, I don't know if you have that ready or if you just want to share a link maybe in the Q&A.
Yeah, so if you go to our website where you have the API families, not all of those are actually in deployment right now. Actually, if you give me just a second, I can pull up a slide.
I can't seem to chat to everyone, but I don't know, Magnus, if you're able to put the Kamara URL into the chat.
Yeah, it's a fraud prevention thing, so sorry you can't do it. No.
It's okay. Well, you now have the URL, so you can put that in the chat.
Okay, I will do it.
Okay, and I've got a slide I can share too that sort of covers off on this. Yeah, so this top layer here, these are ones that are already launched in at least one market. So these are going to be the more mature. And then here are some that are in progress here in the middle. And then the ones on the bottom are kind of, I wouldn't say parking lot, but they're on the radar. And work is either just getting started or is planned to be getting started soon. And so this presentation actually is on our website as well. I'll share the link to the presentation in the chat window. It's just kind of an overview of Kamara, and it includes this slide if you want. Either go ahead and take a screen grab or we'll share the link.
That's good. Next question, which I'm think Marcus will answer after the break. So as an organization, if you want to start contributing to the APIs, where do we start? How do we get working? I think
Yeah, I
that's
think
that's
Marcus is
the
gonna cover
next
that.
talk is pretty much about that. Another question, which is on how does Kamara project check that a telco is fully compliant with the API spec? And I'll add to that, like, is there any plans of adding testing, making sure of compliance and
I
whatnot?
think this is Mark Cornell's favorite question. He also did answer, it wrote to everyone, but this is something that GSMA is actually checking. There's a whole process that GSMA goes through to check that the API spec is Kamara compliant.
Cool. Is there an overview of what GSMA does and what Kamara does? Because I think that would be very useful.
I have a slide on that that I
Yeah,
can
I think Marcus might be addressing that in more detail in
Okay.
his presentation. It's confusing.
So another question again to aggregators: are aggregators required to make APIs universally accessible? Where's the leadership among aggregators? But like, are they required? Would say a Verizon have some requirements for doing a deal with a aggregator? Say, hey, you need to support this for everyone. Would there be something like that?
I don't know that I understand the question, like who universally accessible to whom? I don't know. I'm not understanding the question, I think.
Okay,
If you
so
could add-
my interpretation is that, say, an aggregator couldn't say like, hey, I want to do only Verizon and not AT&T. Like you would have to make it across everyone who implements it.
So there's like a legal requirement, yes or no, but the legal requirement really, it doesn't exist. Like an aggregator can choose who to work with and who not to work with, but it doesn't make sense for them economically, financially, to just work with a specific, like one single carrier. Then they're not really aggregating anything. They're not adding any value. Like their whole business model is to add value. They want to charge more for the APIs. They want to make their margin. So if you can buy, for example, if you can buy an API on a hyperscaler marketplace for 1 cent a call, just as an example, and then you can go buy that same API for 5 cents from an aggregator, but you're only getting it from one telco, you're not going to pay the 5 cents. You're just going to go to the hyperscaler and pay 1 cent. So it just doesn't make sense for them to not offer it across as many telcos as possible. It's just the business model doesn't work for them.
That's a good answer. So yeah, we have a few more minutes. So is it possible to provide API services at the air interface level? So like basically question, how deep can you go? And why do you stop? I'll add, like, where do you stop? Where does it make sense to stop?
I don't think I am technical enough to answer that question.
Yeah, Marcus is going to go a little bit deeper on the technical aspects in the next session.
Which will start very soon, actually. So
Yeah.
we were supposed to have a 5-minute break in 1 minute. So I'll ask Jill and Alicia, do you want that one, or should we just keep going and go straight to Marcus?
I think
yeah, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
We can answer a couple more questions and then hand it over to Marcus. I guess if our audience wants a break, they're welcome to hop off and rejoin. Yeah,
we won't say anything too interesting in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So can we promise that?
No, I don't promise.
We'll see. I guess actually we have answered quite a few of the questions. So one of the questions that left is again like this generic operator agnostics APIs and discovery. I answered a bit of that with what Kevin Smith is doing in the IETF, and then there's the other side, which is the aggregator. So a question, working with MNOs, how likely do you think they are to adopt and change their products to the new Camara standard? And what are your key takeaways? Maybe this is more to Jill, that is not doesn't work for MNO. Like, what are your key takeaways for working with them and seeing how they adopt to new standards and APIs?
That's a tough question, and I don't really have an answer for it. I think it's a work in progress.
But then again, like you see, I would say like almost surprisingly many operators are already signed up, right? And you see announcements here and there. So it's definitely something a lot of or MNOs see in the industry, right?
Yeah, and we're seeing, I mean, I think if you look at who's involved in Open Gateway, that's a good indicator of who, you know, which operators are interested in taking part of this, because pretty much anyone who's part of Open Gateway is going to be able to leverage these Camara APIs. And so, you know, that goes back to showcasing how much Camara has grown since we launched. I would say we are seeing more interest than not. We've got not most, but several of the leading telcos, especially across Europe. In the United States, it's a little bit more difficult because we have fewer. Here in the market, it's a little bit more of a monopoly with just, you know, 3 or 4 main MNOs here. But I mean, we're encouraged. I think most of these folks see the value. I think the hurdle is just pushing people over. And so the next couple of years, I think, are going to be really critical in that space. And so that's where you as the developers come in. The more developers that we have working on this, the more likely it is to be adopted broadly. So, you know, it's a little bit of a circle here, but that's kind of where we're standing at the moment.
Yeah, I agree everything that Jill said. I would add also that I think we see the value in these APIs. There's a ton of analyst reports coming out talking about the total value, but there's also, these are just really making it easier to access the existing network infrastructure, which is basically every telco's goal is to monetize the network. And so these APIs are another way to enable easier access to this information, to the network, to everything that we have to offer. So there's going to be a lot of also kind of like pull through core connectivity revenue that these APIs also drive. And I think that the telcos also see this. So I think where we tried before and failed, there are things that are different now that didn't exist before. So like the networks, for example, are different now, and we can do more with them and makes implementing kind of these standard specifications easier. And it's also one of those things where a rising tide lifts all boats. If we make it easier for developers and we get that volume of requests, then it makes it more revenue for every telco out there. And so I think it's the hardest part about all of this is getting started. I think once the wheel starts turning, it's going to be easier to keep the momentum going.
100%.
Great. 1 more minute left before we hand the floor to Marcus. So I think, you know, we got a question here. It's like, how many developers do you see engaged now? Is it in the hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands or millions? And I'll add billions as well. So is it coming in? Is it mostly internal telco use cases right now? Or are you seeing, I mean, you see some showcases, but is it growing?
The use cases?
No, how many developers are engaging?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is growing. I don't have the numbers offhand. Marcus probably knows. But we've definitely grown since we started. We've got over 1,000 people involved right now. And we're hoping to see that number grow even more.
Great.
And I put this in one of the answers, but anyone can join Camara, anyone can contribute to Camara. Everything is open source and you just need a GitHub account. So there is zero barrier except for you need an internet connection. and a computer.
And a
Other than
GitHub
that, there's no
account.
barrier.
Okay, but that's a perfect segue to the next section, which is by Marcus Kmerler. I am mispronouncing your name, sorry, who is the Outreach Committee Chair, and we're talking about how you can get involved. So first, thanks a lot to Alicia and Jill, and thanks a lot for all the questions we had so far. That's great to keep them coming. So Marcus, are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm there. Thanks, Magnus.
Perfect.
So hello from my side. I will do a very quick introduction. So I have the great luck to be in the API business of Deutsche Telekom from the beginning. So starting with the first ideas, creating the first APIs, initiating Camara and Open Gateway. So it's a great luck, and it's really fantastic to see how this whole ecosystem develops. I would like to start my part with a little wrap up of the first part. I think you have seen now the value of the APIs, and Camara has the intent to de facto standardize it between all the networks and countries so that you have to build the application once and can use it everywhere. You have seen where to get the API definition in the GitHub, but also you can see or can find the real implementations via the GSMA page. There you can find all the productive APIs and the links to the portals where you can get it. It's really great to see that. I want to clarify one point in the beginning. That's exactly this topic. What is Camara doing? What is Open Gateway doing? I've pulled out one slide for that, and hopefully I'm able to share it. Let me see if it works. So, and bring the right slide up. I've pulled this out because I think that helps. In very simple words, Camara wants to standardize the APIs versus Open Gateway wants to standardize the distribution channels. So what does that mean? Typically, a telco exposes the APIs, and for that, the Camara standard is the important one. You can see the APIs as the blue lines here. But we have to bring these APIs to the customers. And for that, we need so-called operate APIs that are the red ones. So we have to build a catalog of our services, transfer it via these operate APIs to the marketplaces, aggregators, hyperscalers, and then there the end customers will be onboarded, and we have to do the onboarding. So we get the information and have to send back all the API credential, the endpoints, the tokens via the operate APIs. And then also we have to exchange the billing information at the end for these APIs. So for that, we need a standardization of these distribution channels. It's a technical standardization, but it's also a commercial standardization. And this part is taken by the GSMA and also by the use of TM Forum, of existing TM Forum APIs. So we don't want to reinvent this part because it's already there. Camara is focusing on the content part on these blue lines. And you can also see here in this picture a purple one. So aggregators and hyperscalers have the possibilities to build own products on it. So like a cloud instance using low latency and sell that to the end customers. So, and I think Alicia mentioned we are in the moment not very much focusing on the federation part, so the operator to operator topic, but in this picture, it is also easy to do. You can consider one operator as an aggregator of another one, and then it fits perfectly in that picture, and we can use the same technologies, the same APIs, and slightly changed business templates to do it. And that's the architecture of the whole ecosystem. This is aligned between Linux Foundation Camara, between the GSMA and TM Forum. We have signed a white paper, and in exact that way, we want to build the ecosystem, and that helps all other partners, our industrial partners, to have a clear specification what to do, and to help to build this ecosystem. And we already have a couple of aggregators, hyperscalers working here and helping to bring the APIs to the end customers. So hopefully that helps a little bit to understand the ecosystem and the collaboration. So it's a very, very fruitful, a very close, a very trustful cooperation between all partners, because at the end, it's easy. We only win together. And for that, all people are interested that it is working and it is growing. So with that, I would like to change to more my part. You have already seen a couple of use cases of APIs. And to be really honest, we are only at the starting point in the moment. A lot of the APIs are still technical. I remember the discussion around slicing and quality profiles. In the end, it's the wrong discussion, because we want to provide intent-based APIs. So what's interesting for developers, for US developers, you have an application on your mobile phone, and the simple thing what you want to have is from this mobile phone, from this IP address, using that interface, that port, to a special service in the internet on a server with also an IP address and a port. And you can come to us and tell us, please give me the lowest latency or the best bandwidth you can provide for my application in the next hour. And that's a level we want to have in the APIs. And then it's up to us as operators to build the best solution. And if we can use slices, it's fine. If we are doing it with 5G QCI classes, 5QI classes, then it's also fine. And if we don't have 5G, then we can use QCI classes from the 4G network. So it's up to us, operators, how we implement these APIs. And by the way, we can do a little bit more. We can doing some traffic influence. So that means we bring the exchange point where the data leaves the telco infrastructure and goes to the internet closest to the device, that we avoid unnecessary times there in the fixed line. We can optimize our fixed line infrastructure. We can doing some edge cloud topics, even some optimization in Wi-Fi's, which are involved. So we can do a lot to provide the target, to provide the lowest latency. So by that, I would like to invite you also to join Camara. Now we are switching the view. So the first part was around how to use the APIs. Now the second part is how you can collaborate and work in Camara to build the best APIs. So with that, I switch. I think we have seen this one to one more picture. So what we are doing in Camara, we are building this intent-based, simple level of APIs. And we are doing it using already existing technical APIs at the southbound. So you have mobile APIs in the 5G or 4G core. They are standardized by 3GPP, for example. We have the same one for fixed line. We have IT APIs. We have cloud APIs by ETSI-MEC. Dario is also in the call. So we have already a couple of technical APIs there. And we want to translate this intent-based question. So please give me the best latency to our technical capabilities. And that's the work we are doing in Camara. We are defining this API. So that's the user view, and also trying to implement a transformation function between this API definition and the southbound backend. Let me go to the next slide. I want to show quickly that we have 3 types of APIs for that. So we have the blue ones that are the Camara APIs, and this can be divided in 2 parts. So real service APIs, but also in service management APIs, just that you have heard it. For example, if you are in a network and you want to have you optimize your data connection, you first need the information how the network performs. And that can be get by use of a service management API to see, yeah, the performance of my network is now not the best. Then at second, you can ask which services are available to improve the situation. Then you can use these operate APIs, this catalog, which I mentioned, to get, for example, the answer, look, use our quality in demand API. And then you can use the quality in demand API, which is a service API, to improve the situation. And then at the end, again, use the service management API to get the performance and hopefully experience a better connection than before. So that's just that you have heard it. We have these 3 types of APIs. That is what I really want to point out. The scope of Camara, the mandatory scope, is to define the APIs, to provide the YAML file for the APIs and the best user documentation for these APIs. If possible, we want to have this transformation function, but that is not mandatory. That is an optional part. The reason is for sometimes it makes sense, for sometimes it does not make sense. Example, if you have a defined southbound, like a 5G standalone network exposure function, which is standardized by 3GPP, then it makes sense to provide this code, because then the next operator can take it and slightly modify it and immediately use it. So for that case, it makes sense. If we don't have a standardized southbound, then it does not make sense, because if a telco has legacy applications and uses that, then the transformation function is different from operator to operator, and for that it does not make sense to share this code. So it really depends, and for that, the code implementing the API is optional, but the YAML file, the service definition, and the service documentation, that's mandatory to have in Camara. Okay, now I want to show you, yeah, what's the benefit to work in Camara? Let's focus first on that. Why joining Camara? So by that way, you have the best possibility to influence the APIs. You can bring in your demand, you can build the best APIs, you can bring in your requirements, you can influence the definition. I think that's the biggest argument and biggest motivation to join. Also, you have the clear view that this code is then used globally by a lot of people, which is also a good argument. And joining Camara, working in Camara, I think it's the best option to learn about all this ecosystem and the APIs itself. You get a lot of deep knowledge about the APIs if you join Camara. And in the end, if you have done some contribution, you can also become a maintainer. So that's a kind of project lead in Camara, and even a technical steering committee member where you can influence technical decisions in Camara. So a lot of good reasons to join. And now I would like to show you how that works. So we can divide between 2 things. The one is joining the communication. The other is joining the development work. And both are completely independent. Joining the communication is very easy. You only have to send an empty email to this email address, and then the onboarding happens. You are in, and you are immediately on the mailing list of the all hands call. You then can join the different groups and are also on these mailing lists, are invited to the meetings. That is really simple. It's also quite simple to leave it. So there is also an email address to leave it, and it's done in minutes. So it's very open, totally free, and very simple. The second thing, if you want to join the technical implementation, that is much easier. You can just starting. So everybody can go to the GitHub. You can see the link here. Can have a look. It's completely open. There is nothing hidden. You can review all the results, the resources, the documents. And if you want to do improvements, we can immediately start. You can create issues. You can start changing things and creating pull requests. There is no prerequisite. It's really simple. It's open. That's a simple way. How is Camara structured? So if you go into Camara, you can find different repositories. In the moment, we have repositories for each API family. So for example, here you can see quality in demand. And we have two types of repositories. The one are in the moment called lead repositories, where you can find the API definition. So that's this quality in demand here. And then we have provider implementation. You can see it on the suffix here, PI1, PI2, PI3, where you can find the code implementing the API. And for quality demand, we are really happy to have already 3 provider implementation. One is in Java language, the second is in Kotlin language, and the third one is in Go language. That's the main difference, but they are all implementing the same API. And that's the structure today in Camara. We are in progress to change it a little bit because we want to have the sub-projects, and below the sub-projects, then repositories for each API. And then below the API, then the provider implementation. So we split up these families into single APIs because it's easier to manage in a sense of release management. Good. Also, if you look on the mailing list, if you are in a mailing list, you also can see the information how to post to a mailing list, how to subscribe, how to unsubscribe, who is the owner. So it's really easy. It's open. Just great. Good. To join a sub-project, you can browse the repositories, and if you are interested, for example, in quality in demand, you can find the meeting information in the README. So you can directly access this information, join the meetings. You can look at the meeting minutes. In all the repos, this information is documented. And if you want to be part of a group, you can find here also the link to join the mailing list. So it's all in the README of the different repositories. So let me look if I have forgotten something. Yeah, one point to add. What I want to mention for the more technical people here on the call, we are using the fork and pull model in Camara. So changes are not immediately pushed into the main branch. So typically, if you want to do a change, it starts with an issue, and then you or a maintainer will take it and will do some work and changing files, and then create a pull request out of it. So that's a change request in Camara. Then other contributors can work on it, and then if they are fine with it, finally it goes to the code owners of the sub-projects, and also optional some maintainers, and they then do the approval. We have a cooldown period of 2 days. So if there is no objection in 2 days, then one of the code owners will merge it and will do it will bring it in the main branch. So by that we have a quality control what's happening in Camara, but I think it's a typical process in a lot of the open source projects. So let me end with a little advertisement. We would like to welcome you in Camara. It's really open, it's free. You can join, you can leave at every time, and it's very easy. If you have questions, you can put it here on the Camara contact page. You can find a template there. To join Camara, the communication, you can use this email address. If you would like to join with your organization, so being on the Camara website with the logo, then send us to this email address. And if you want to be a sponsor, there is also an enrollment link where you can use it. So with that, I would like to end my part. It was a little bit a monologue, and now we are changing to question and answer, and for that, back to Magnus.
Yes, so I do not see any specific answers to what you were talking about, Marcus. So you must have been very clear. No misunderstandings there. So what I figured I could do is we have now 9 minutes until we're supposed to have 15-minute break. So if you want to answer some questions, I'm happy to ask them.
Are questions that I think Marcus should maybe or could answer better than Jill or me. Like there's one on security and how we incorporate security into the development of the API specs. Marcus, do you feel comfortable answering that one?
So I'm looking if I can find it. Security challenge. Security mechanism in place. We are using OpenID as security mechanism. We have one sub-project which is called Identity and Consent Management, because consent is a big topic. We can use a lot of the APIs without consent on legitimate interest, so the fraud APIs, but for the more difficult ones, like using location, providing location, we need the consent of the end user. And for that, we have an own sub-project working on this CBAR flow, which is necessary, on the necessary standards for that we fulfill the security requirements. And I think that's the main thing. I don't know if in the certification of GSMA there is a part in, I'm not sure, it would be a question to Mark. But security is a very important topic for us, and we want to be compliant to all security requirements, to the data privacy requirements, network neutrality. That is pretty clear.
Yeah, I can add a bit to that. So like when you do typical Camara API calls, it is very like typical RESTful API calls, and you use like the complete standard like OpenID and encryption. There's like HTTPS. There's like all of that like classical security kind of things is just done by best practices in a sense, right? So then there's the next step, which is more privacy, consent, and whatnot, where I guess there is still work to be done. But I think if I know Marcus's company, it's being taken very seriously. Okay, so a few more questions. Is there any categorization of the service APIs, like service management or operation APIs, or?
Yeah, it looks like there's some questions in here about the difference between what TM Forum is doing with the operate APIs.
Yeah, probably I can take that again. So there's a clear split of the work. The Camara APIs are more on the content, providing the content, whereas the operate APIs are management APIs. So for example, if we want to connect an operator to another operator or to an aggregator, we have to share the catalog of our services. And that we are doing with this TM Forum APIs because they are already there. We don't need to reinvent them. We can use the existing API standard. And the same applies for all the onboarding information. So sending the developer information to the operator and then providing back the credentials to access the APIs, the endpoints, the tokens, all the things what you need. For that, we can also use the existing TM Forum APIs. So that is this part, whereas the Camara APIs really focus on the content, like quality demand, like providing location check or connectivity insight, all the content which is needed.
So would I be summarizing it correctly, is saying that Kamara APIs is basically an abstraction, right? You just want to know the location or the device ID, and you don't care about whatever happens underneath with the specific operators and whatnot.
Yeah, that's true. Kamara APIs is on an intent-based, easy-to-use level, but is on the content side, whereas TM Forum is more around the operation of the whole thing.
Yeah, maybe that's a segue to one of the questions we have earlier about how deep will, say, connectivity inside API go on, say, will there be API services on an air interface level? I'll give you that one as well, Marcus.
It will depend on the contribution which we get in this sub-project. So we invite all the developers to join, to bringing their requirements, and they can influence it. That's a simple answer. It's an open source project. It's driven and steered by contribution. That's a simple thing. And you all have the possibilities to join and to bring it in the right direction.
That's great. Let's see. We have one more question on, hey, this is based mostly for 4G, 5G. What about fixed network domains? And I will talk about that in the later talk. I know Paul Fonte from Cable Labs also will talk about that. But Marcus, do you have anything to add or give us a bit of a layup?
Just one very clear statement. Kamara is working on telco APIs. Telco. We have started with mobile because it was the motivation of the whole thing, but we want to cover telco. So also looking into the fixed line, and we already have the first APIs for the home Wi-Fi's, which are connected to the routers. We want to have this all the edge cloud topics. We want to have more IT-driven APIs, so we are on the telco level.
Great. I mean, one more question about the TM Forum and the overlap, but I think you answered those pretty well.
We tried not to have an overlap. We use the existing standards. We have to modify it because we learned that we, for example, need somewhat detailed information via these APIs. So the 931 is generic, and out of our compliance checks, which we have to do, we need a lot more information about the use cases, for example, and so we have to create new versions of these APIs. But it is driven by GSMA and TM Forum. We are working on it, and there is no overlap. There shall be no overlap. That's a clear intent from all organizations.
That's good. One more question. So telcos will need to buy, or may or will need to buy APIs as well as sell them. Is there any standardization initiative for that as well? And where would this fall, in a sense? Where it be GSMA, Kamara, TM Forum, or anywhere else, or don't you know anything about it?
I think I also have to answer this. Is the federation part. We are considering one operator as an aggregator of another one, and so you can use the same technology, the same APIs for this. You need different business models between, that's clear, but GSMA is working on it, has provided already the first templates for it, so we are prepared to that.
Great. I'm starting to run out of questions. If anyone is seeing any more. Yeah, so Brent asked, can you provide a link for the Kamara API for home Wi-Fi? I can do that as well. But yeah, so there's home QoD, I believe it's called as of now. And then I will actually talk about using the connectivity inside APIs to expose root cause analysis from the home, but also within the Kamara spec as well.
Magnus, I would use the time also to point out a very important statement. We want to listen to the voice of the customers. And I personally had a key experience for it in a talk with Meta. We talked about quality in demand and how we can improve the data connection and how that helps Facebook and all the other WhatsApp and type of thing. And then they answered, we don't need it because we already have solved it. We're doing the caching on our side, and by that we can solve it on our side. But, and the but is the most important, but you can help us. If you could provide us different, it would be great, because what we need is we want to have the information how the network behaves in a typical summer afternoon at 4 p.m. in Cologne, because that will help us to optimize our caching. And from that point on, we have been discussing a complete different case and different API. And for that, it's really important. We want to listen to the voice of the customers to build the right APIs and the best APIs. And that's a very clear statement, which I want to give at the end.
Yes, we are at an end. Do you want to keep going or a few more questions?
We can do,
supposed to
yeah.
be a break. Yeah, okay. I don't need a break, so it's fine. So as you mentioned, Marcus, Comar is focused on telco APIs. So is OSS BSS functionality to be added, can be added, will be added? And I guess once again we're back to like overlaps with TM Forum and whatnot.
Yeah, again, we try not to have an overlap. We are using the TM Forum APIs internally to build these transformation functions. So for example, if we have to provide a kind of quality in demand and we want to do it by slicing, we have to initialize slices on our side and communicate between our systems. And for that, we internally use TM Forum APIs. That's very, very clear. So, and we want, yeah, we want to have both worlds to implement the best APIs. So there should be no overlap. That's a clear target. And if there is something, we will fix it.
Great. Is there any sandbox available for testing Comar APIs?
Well, not on the Camara level in the moment, but I think each of the operators has labs and has possibilities to test APIs. I'm not sure if we have an overview of that, but I think it's a good idea to create it, and because that helps to test it, to get feedback, and also to get in touch with developers and customers to build the right APIs.
I think I agree. It's a good idea and something that is needed.
Yep.
I think maybe a couple of the aggregators will want to offer that if they don't already. So we'll see what they have to say in their talks that are coming up. So can you tell us more about the East-West APIs and if any recent progress?
Yeah, I think in the moment there is not much focus on, because we are completely busy with the northbound. That's in the moment the more important part, but it will come. And yeah, very clear. The intent is to use the same APIs, that we don't have to reinvent all the things. The only thing what has to be done is the commercial agreement and the routing type of thing. But on all the topics, GSMA is working very well. So we are prepared on that.
Great. I'm running out of questions, so maybe we should do a little break unless anyone has something they want to say before the next section. Let me grab screen share again. So coming up in just 10 minutes, is the first talk, and now we're getting into a bit more use cases. So both Domos and Broadpeak will talk about some use cases. We've done some things, and we want to show like, hey, this is something you can actually do with Comaro APIs, and we've done proof of concepts and whatnot. And Paul will talk about the wireline perspective, as has been asked multiple times. And then we have our aggregators, so Nokia and Microsoft. We'll talk about that. And we have the Mac standardization perspective as well. So that is coming up in 9 minutes now. So unless there's anything else, I will take a short break, and in 8 minutes now, we'll be back to get started with the shorter presentations. Okay, we are back. So this is the second section of this webinar. So we are now getting into use cases, listening to people who have had experiences working with Kamara APIs, and people who are aggregating them, and in general, people who are doing anything interesting with them. So first off is the only person that has as bad jokes as myself. It is me. So I will talk about executing and presenting connectivity inside and quality on demand APIs in Microsoft Teams. And after me, Pavel from Nokia is talking about how it is to build a great developer experience for network APIs. And I think answering a lot of the questions that have been asked through the first sessions. Then we have Cable Labs on the wireline perspective. Broad Peak, who did quality on demand for streaming, is going to talk about that experience before Microsoft is going to be talking about Azure's vision for network aware application with Ricardo. And then there's the Mac standardizations perspective from Dario. So I will get into it. Once again, you can answer questions in the Q&A. So please do that. And for my own talk, it will be a bit difficult to look at them, but for the rest of them, I will try to moderate. And I will try to keep everyone on time. So one more thing, this is all being recorded, and it will be uploaded to understandingnetworkapis.com later. So with that said, I'm getting into my talk. So this is about our experience with executing and presenting connectivity inside APIs and quality on demand APIs inside Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to talk actually quite a bit about why we want to do this, or our motivation, and then a bit about the experience, and then we have an interesting offer to developers who are interested. So what do we do in Domos? So our goal is to bridge the gap between applications and networks. And this is kind of why APIs, network APIs exist, or one of the reasons why network APIs exist. So why is Domos needed, right? So we believe there are a few missing pieces for network APIs to become the $300 billion story that McKinsey is talking about. At least there are quite a few things that we need to do before we get anywhere near that number. And we think we have some of those pieces, not necessarily everyone. Okay, so I think one of the things I think is fundamental is that quality on demand and connectivity inside API is what really set network APIs apart from many of the existing possibilities you have. Yeah, yes, you have fraud prevention, but there are other ways of doing that. Network APIs is probably a better way of doing it, but quality on demand and connectivity inside is something completely new. But if I put my developer goggles on, and I used to develop quite a few things, I get a few questions, right? So quality on demand, can I trust it? Like, how much better quality will I get? Will it be enough? And when I look at a connectivity inside API, of course, I'm a network. I've been working in network for a long time, so I can maybe interpret this. But if I go talk to people I went to university with who are developers, like, congestion levels doesn't mean much to them. And there's the other question that's been asked a lot of today is like, does this only work in 5G? What about the home network? What about the other networks? And another question is like, hey, do I need to build a UX for this? Is it consumer facing? How do I present this to the end user? So these are the questions we try to help developers answer. So how, like, what do we do specifically? So we build 2 software development kits that put networks into application context. So we've been the lead developer of a network quality framework called Quality of Outcome in the IETF. And it's essentially, how can you measure the probability of meeting some network requirement which you can set up for an app. So you can say something about, hey, what is the probability that I will have a perfect Zoom webinar on the network connection I'm on right now? Additionally, it has the possibility of doing this what-if calculations, which is quite unique with this quality outcome framework, where you can, with statistical sense, say something, hey, what if I got quality on demand? What if I got a slice? What if I did get a Wi-Fi extender? You can make calculations, okay, how much would application or the probability of a perfect application actually improve? So that's the core of what we're doing. So we put this in different places. We have one app SDK, which goes inside applications, right? And it does this quality outcome analysis for the specific app. And then it can also find external network APIs and present the UX for the end user. So what's cool is that I can actually show you that right now. So here it is inside Google Chrome. And there it is. Little Chrome plugin, you can install it yourself. And this is calculating my probability of having a perfect Google Meet call and all sorts of details. And then it actually discovers a network API, which we have been working a bit on with our friends in Cable Labs, which means we can actually go and prioritize Google Meet from this web-based applications through Komaro APIs. So that is cool, and Paul will talk a bit more about what Cable Labs is doing later. And then we also have a network SDK, which we have deployed on quite a few home routers, which does essentially connectivity inside analysis in the context of apps. And it can expose connectivity inside and quality on demand APIs, both to the CSP, but also to third-party applications, and do that in a almost Komaro compliant way, but it will be fully Komaro compliant. So what we're trying to do is, hey, we're going to build the trust. We're going to help you interpret. We're going to provide it to multi-network, and we're going to help you build the UX for it. So trust and interpretation, right? So I talked a bit about quality outcome, which is basically about taking very complex network statistics and putting into the probability of a perfect Teams call or Zoom webinar or whatever. And then this proof of enhancement. So if I apply quality on demand, how much better will it get? And I need to know this before I actually execute this quality on demand call. Because if we want to build trust with developers, if you are selling to a developer, if it ever comes to that you're selling to a developer, hey, you can buy a quality on demand, and they execute that, they buy it, and it doesn't get any better, well, they're never going to buy it again. They're not going to build tools or build code that actually keeps buying this if it doesn't work. So we think this proof enhancement, having that before you're actually executing it, is very, very important. And yeah, open standard quality outcome, ITF, adopted by the Internet Performance Measure Working Group, working towards becoming an RFC. That is still some work to do. But again, the probability of meeting network requirements and allowing for what-if calculation, which can help us build trust and help developers interpret it. Because you need to answer this question, like, why should someone get quality on demand? Right? You need to know, okay, hey, you need to get this when your app experience is poor, and you need to know that getting it actually improves your app experience, right? So quality outcome and then prioritize proof enhancement. Okay, so extending beyond 5G and 4G, we are working on that with our network SDK for home routers, which is deployed on quite a few routers with operators. And then we're building UX component for quality outcome and connectivity inside as well. So I actually want to show you what this looked like. So for MWC, we did a demo using the Komaro APIs in this video. So inside Microsoft Teams, everyone can see each other's network quality. And as you can see, Sonia is using her KPN network, which enables her to actually prioritize the call from within inside Microsoft Teams. And because Magnus was on a KPN network, I was actually able to upgrade my bandwidth through a Komaro API call. And we've actually done this multiple times. We did it a few weeks ago on a hackathon with Orange, where we did the same thing. So here you can see it. We could actually get and execute quality on demand API calls from inside Microsoft Teams. And here are the components I talked about. So what is the probability that I will have a perfect Teams call? It's 72%. No, that's not perfect. There's 28% probability that I will have some hiccups. Okay, what can we do then? Well, here you can see some Komara bins for getting quality on demand. And we can also calculate before we execute them, okay, how much will this improve the probability, right? So if I get the QoS plus 23 percentage points to 95, we believe that having a front end user facing UX, B, putting the network quality in the context of the app, and C, executing these Komaro API calls and having this a priori proof of enhancement will be key for connectivity inside and quality on demand. And I see I'm running out of time a bit here, so I'll just be very quick. So I'll share some of our experiences with implementing this. So what we already see is that API discovery. So we need to look for the Orange API. We need to look for the KPN API, and we've done this with others as well. And we need to keep looking for them. And this is still an exhaustive list, and it's still quite a bit of work to do. So we are very glad that people are working on aggregating this, because we don't really want to do that. And then identity management, like how the identity is set, is still not all set. So it differs a bit between different operators still. So we hope that there will be better standardization of this. And I can hear Marcus's voice in my head. It's like, hey, please contribute, and we probably will. And then another thing we'll learn, and you saw that already, we've done quality on demand. We've done in two different ways. So one is the classical Komaro way, quality on demand with prioritization levels on mobile, but we also did it for fixed networks. And then it was upgrading bandwidth. We still actually use the same quality on demand API. It was just populated differently between these two. And we think that will keep going, especially as we see more networks adopting Komaro and the APIs. That quality on demand may not just be one thing, or it may be one thing, and there will be more like home quality on demand, the home broadband or home bandwidth quality on demand and whatnot. So exactly how that will turn out is yet to be seen. And the same goes for connectivity inside. So for example, Wi-Fi and mobile are in some ways similar, but they're different enough so that a root cause analysis looks very different. So we believe that this will also have many forums, at least for now, and it remains to be seen exactly how that turns out. If it's multiple APIs, or we keep creating one connectivity inside API standard that can cover more segments. So that's it.
I could quickly step in.
Yeah,
you're completely right. We all learn in this new technology, in this new topic, and we have realized the situation. So the first activities have started in quality on demand to work on the profiles, that we have standardized as profiles behind the API. So we have also got the same experience. But thanks.
Yeah, no, it's not meant as criticism. It's meant as we still need to work on this and figure it out. So okay. And yeah, that's one. We have one news that we're making an SDK open, so available on demand. If please reach out if you want to look at how you can actually take these UX components we have and test them out and maybe work further with them. So thank you for listening. So please reach out if you're interested, and I am perfectly on time. So that means I don't get to answer any questions, but I do get to introduce our next speaker, which is Pavel. So he's going to talk about building a great developer experience for network APIs. He's the developer experience lead at API platforms for Nokia. Are you there, Pavel?
Yeah. Hi, Magnus. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes. We can
great.
see you as well.
Great.
Uh,
So
if you are sharing a screen, we can't see your screen.
just a sec. I have never used Zoom, so bear with me.
It's the big green button. It's
Yes. There,
there you go.
if I can.
Perfect.
All right. So, yeah, as Magnus said, I'm the developer experience lead at Nokia, and specifically the Nokia's network as code platform that we are building. And so the network as code platform is part of the Kamara initiative, and essentially it's an aggregator platform that aggregates these telco service exposure interface and then provides a way to end customer or consumer to basically consume these same Kamara APIs and same telco APIs of different operators through one platform and one interface without having to resort to, for example, signing individual contracts with each operator. And essentially how it looks like today is here. You can go to this URL and see for yourself. And basically this is our developer portal that we are building as the primary interface for API consumers to come learn about the platform and get started with. And so there are three aspects of modern API platforms in general that like modern API platforms share. So the ease of use, support, and transparency. And essentially all API platforms nowadays are easy and quick to get started with. They offer a lot of self-service capabilities. They provide very extensive documentation about their APIs. They even provide SDKs on top of the APIs to enhance that developer experience further. Knowledge base articles, blogs, and so on and so forth to provide as much information about how to use the API, what are the use cases these APIs are good for, and yeah. And then on top of all of that learning material, there are also support channels and even community support through which developers can gain even more knowledge and help in their integration journey. Then there's the transparency, which consists of for clear and fair pricing. So there is usually this pay-per-use model, and then with like volume discounts and etc. And then obviously because it's a service that somebody will be relying on. It needs to be secure, scalable, and reliable. So that's in general, but I think I wanted to take this opportunity and maybe dive a bit deeper into the current experience that I've seen in terms of the telco APIs, and maybe just go over the basics of what makes a good developer experience. So the first thing and the most important thing is make it work. So first and foremost, it's I think we already talked about this, making it discoverable. So can a new developer find all the necessary information to call your API? If not, that means that probably you need to handhold them, and that means that you can only service just so many customers, and basically you're limited by that. So discoverability is the key to basically scalability. Then, are you consistent? So do you use the same terms across your API and documentation? Do you follow conventions and standards to basically ensure that there's as minimal friction, basically? And third, is your service reliable? If I call your API right now, will it respond with 200 OK or error 500, and even how fast? That's also latency is also a key factor. And maybe more importantly, will my code still work 1 week, month, or a year from now? Because that also creates reliability and trust in that your platform keeps operating and working just as expected when at the time I wrote my code. So about discoverability, there are things like, so first of all, as I said, it's easy to get started, and there's a sign up, maybe you add a payment, get your API key, and follow the quick start guide. This sort of first experience is matters a lot, and you sort of, to get that first wow factor, you need to get that process nailed down. Then there are tutorials that you can provide, nudge the developers in the right direction. There are reference documentation that you obviously must provide, but even there are varying qualities. So you need to basically describe what to expect to the developer. And then going further, there are use case scenarios that you can provide to basically inspire the developers to maybe place them into that use case. Maybe they're coming from a specific vertical background. And basically, if you get that right, they might get interested. And then code examples. So show how to properly implement your API contract, because that's basically it. You are describing your API contract and expecting the developer to fulfill that. But you can go a step further and provide like reference implementation, as is done, for example, in Kamara in certain APIs. And I think the biggest issue right now that I see in the telco APIs is there's lots of hidden knowledge. So that's the biggest showstopper also in terms of adoption. And I think that's what we as a community need to work on. And then how do you keep your API consistent? So obviously use consistent naming, pick the case and you stick to it, pick the term and use it consistently. Same goes for the identifiers. If you accept one type of identifier, one API or endpoint, you should probably also do the same for the rest of your APIs. Then there's the unified data format. So always returning the same object in the same with the same attributes, and obviously adhering to standards like REST, HTTP, OpenAPI specification, even Camara, if we're talking about telco APIs. Also considering de facto standards too. Developers are nowadays working quite a lot with APIs, so there are already standards that that have become like de facto. So those are good to know and good to work with. And so you might think, how do you keep track of this? What we do is maintain internal documentation and vocabulary and guidelines that we use to basically keep track of all of this. So that's my recommendation. And then third, the reliability. So obviously make sure it's up. If I come right now to your platform and try to make an API call, if it doesn't work, do I want to come later? Maybe. So minimizing downtime, there are a lot of different resources and practices on the internet. Just it's easy to find those. And maintain, like, for example, a API live status page, which developers can quickly reference. And second, make it robust. So design for failure and expect the unexpected, basically. And especially, I think, important that don't expect that the application can consistently track the state. Provide also endpoints that basically allow you to retrieve all, so that application can reconstruct the state if they lose it. And then last, but I think the most important, is you try to not break the contract that you've established. So before pushing it out, you test it, you think about it, you make it, for example, first like iteration, beta tests, and before you publish it again, because once you publish it, you can't really introduce breaking changes because that's breaking the contract that you've established, and somebody might depend on it already. So another option would be backwards compatibility. So once we get the API actually working, iron out all the little details, what makes a API breeze to use? So pretty simple. So it's simplicity, intuitivity, and how helpful it is. So for example, in simplicity, try to avoid confusing names. Your API users likely aren't from the same domain as you, so they might not know all the acronyms and shorthands, and that needs to be like expected and accounted for. Also, packing too much functionality into one endpoint is not great. There are many arguments for that, but essentially it's much better if you, for example, follow hierarchical URL patterns. And then also just make it intuitive, reflect real-world concepts, use meaningful names, and so on. But whatever you do, be consistent. And third, be helpful. So include metadata, support query parameters, provide helpful error messages. And lastly, basically, once you make your API work, make it nice to use. Third is to support your developers. So essentially, create channels through which developers can learn more, interact with you, interact with the community. Also make sure there are experts who can help. So for example, again, the Kamara project is a great place for that in terms of the telco APIs. But also start small, because probably the community is in the beginning very small. So don't try to cover every different channel, but expand according to the demand. There are also updates that are nice to have. So keep developers informed about the updates, changes, bug fixes, new features, and maintain changelog of your API, and perhaps keep it close to the API reference documentation. And
Hey,
then,
Pavel,
yeah.
I see you're running out of time, but I'll
Oh.
give you 1 minute to wrap up, okay?
Thank you. And basically, yeah, lastly, listen to the feedback, but also have a process in place to actually get that feedback into your development. Yeah, and that's basically a wrap up. Thanks. And any questions?
So I didn't have to interrupt you then. I feel bad now, but I'm gonna hand it over to Paul Fonte from Cable Labs. He's director of the Future Infrastructure Group, and he's gonna talk about the wireline perspective of network as a service. Paul, I can see you. And I can see your slides. I have not heard you yet, so.
You hear me? Am I good?
Yes, I can. So.
Perfect. Yeah, so thanks, Magnus. As you mentioned, I'm Paul Fonte, director in the Future Infrastructure Group at Cable Labs. And so before we dig into the wireline perspective, what is Cable Labs? And so Cable Labs is an R&D consortium for the largest cable operators in the world. So one of the requirements to be a member of Cable Labs is that you operate an HFC network that leverages the DOCSIS protocol. Now, with that said, a vast majority of our members operate multiple networks, fiber, mobile, and HFC. And so with that notion, we focus across all the technology and all the different networks. And one of the main programs we've been looking at is a convergence, specifically for our members, looking at converged on the cores, the mobile core, the HFC core, and the fiber. And so in looking at that, that led us to also looking at, as a part of that, is how do we create convergence at the application layer. And so we started a program at Cable Labs a few years ago called Network as a Service. And the goal of Network as a Service is really how can we expose new services and capabilities to third-party partners for our members through APIs that are access technology agnostic. The APIs work across all three access technologies, and it shouldn't matter. You should be able to request a service, request data, customization, whatever you want to do, and be able to do that seamlessly. And so that's been a big focus for us over the past couple of years. Now, we are not doing something different specifically just for our members. We came across Kamara very early on in this program and really agreed with how they're creating alignment in the broader telco industry on these APIs. And so what we wanted to do was where can we contribute with new APIs that provide the wireline perspective. And as I mentioned, we look at HFC and fiber as well, and also the Wi-Fi capabilities. A lot of applications are connecting through Wi-Fi still. And so how can it be agnostic, whether it's on Wi-Fi or mobile, that the user gets the experience they want? And so we've been engaged with Kamara, also aligned with other initiatives. Nothing we're trying to do is trying to be unique to our membership. We want it to be broad across the industry. We think there's tremendous value in creating that alignment on these APIs across all communication providers. And so we, as Magnus mentioned, we've done several POCs. We've done some work with the quality of outcome, looking at that. We've looked at several different services and capabilities. And so what I wanted to highlight was something that I thought would resonate with the majority of the group, was a POC we did called Traveler Wi-Fi. And so what Traveler Wi-Fi is focused on is how can you create an enhanced Wi-Fi experience for guests of hotels and short-term rentals. And so what we wanted to do was leveraging the current Kamara APIs, can we spin up a private network for a guest who's checking in, whether it's to a hotel or to a short-term rental home, and allow them to select the desired speed tier that they would like for the duration of their stay. And also make sure that it's privately and it's secured, right? So you're not worrying about if you go into a hotel, everyone connects to the same SSIDs. If you're at a Airbnb or something, or VRBO home, more than likely that SSID and password has not been changed for a long time. And so there's security risks and issues there. So how can we do that? Leveraging what already exists. And so I'll provide just a quick demo. So again, as CableLabs, we don't build products, we don't build services. What we try to do is again, provide interoperability, provide a healthy ecosystem for the broader membership. So everything you see here is we did it for strictly the purposes of validating the APIs as a POC. And so this is a lightweight version of the application we created. And so what happens is what you're doing is, as a guest, I'm going to make a reservation. We'll pick the beach house as the short-term rental. And so we'll pick, we'll say we're going to come this weekend and we'll go ahead and check in. And so we booked that reservation, and now we'll fast forward and say it's now the 14th. We're ready to check in. Upon check-in, we're prompted with a new unique SSID and password. We are also allowed to customize that as well if we want. And so for this scenario, pretend I'm traveling with a family. So I'll say Paul's home Wi-Fi and my super secure password. And so that now will be pushed in through API calls. And now it prompts me as well to say, what is the speed tier I would like during my duration? And so since I'm a valued member of this short-term rental service, I already get 500 down and 50 up. But I want to upgrade to the elite package since I have the entire family. And so submit that. And now I'm checked in. I now have my secure private network that I put in my home credentials so that all my devices, the kids' devices, would all connect. When I go to run a speed test, I can see, okay, I'm getting the elite service of what I want. And all this is happening through API calls. And so what's happening in the background is, again, we set this up as this developer platform. Again, we don't do product or end solutions, but we did it for the purposes of validating this POC. And so we're already assuming that the hotel or short-term rental, all the T's and C's, the relationship's already been established. They've registered their application. They have their private tokens that they're able to get access to the service catalogs. And so what's happening is upon check-in through that portal is the hotel or short-term rental application is actually making an API call into the API gateway of that network operator. And so this is leveraging the network access management API, specifically the isolated networks endpoint within that. And so that's happening when they go to check in, when they set the SSID. Now, obviously, in hotels, it would be a very different scenario. You would not be creating a ton of unique SSIDs on hotels. They have commercial APs that could support VLANs. And we've looked at similar what's going on with network slicing on the mobile side, being able to carve out a trust domain to where you have the same SSID, but you have your unique credentials. And so makes a call. The network then says, okay, provide this private network to this guest on the premise. And that's now established. And then we saw once we prompted and we created that another API call is made because we're selecting our desired speed tier. And so that will then you leverage the home network QoD API from Kamara that's been mentioned. Same process will then make that call into the API gateway. And then that will then set the speed tier for that private network for the duration of their stay. And something that's nice within the API, I didn't mention the network access management API, is it does account for duration. And so if for some reason you forget to check out or whatever the case may be, your private network automatically spins down during that time upon checkout. And so see that this is something we all can relate to. We've all traveled, have had issues with the Wi-Fi. We actually demoed this for hotel companies that said, majority of their calls to the front desk are are Wi-Fi related, which they're not IT support at the front desk. So this was really running through this process was to show what's capable if you start looking at how can we leverage these different APIs for different services in different areas. We've also been looking, as Magnus mentioned, the quality of outcome. We've looked at some enhancements on that. We're looking at location services. How can that be leveraged for our members? And so this was just to give a flavor of what's capable with these network APIs if you can create the alignment. And so what the outcome of that POC was through the application that we spun up, we were able to create that service in 4 different countries across 4 different members in real time. So across Europe, Canada, and the US. And so you start to see if we can create this alignment, there's tremendous value of aligning between application developers, third parties, hyperscalers, and the network operators. We think that the opportunity is obviously connectivity, but it's beyond connectivity and what's capable. If you can align and you can start to think about, how do you innovate on top of these APIs once these services are standardized and available across multiple operators. And then really the kind of aha moment when we were going through this is, and even in talking to our members, is really view these APIs as ingredients in a recipe book. What was leveraged to spin up this service is the quality on demand network access management API, and specifically calling specific endpoints within that API. But when you start to think about, okay, what are the different endpoints you can call to create a service, that's how you start to view at these network APIs. And the point was brought up that there's terminology that is very specific to network operators that I think would be great to get feedback on what is the most value for these intent-based APIs and any of that complexity that needs to be evolved. How do we move that southbound and let the network operators handle that? As I mentioned with a traveler Wi-Fi scenario, very different deployments on how that would happen in a hotel versus a short-term rental residence. And that really should be left on the operators to be able to determine that and provide that. To whereas developers, you just want to be able to provide this service to your end user to provide value. And so with that said, if there's any questions, take those or reach out. I'm not sure where I'm at with my time.
You have 3 minutes left.
That's perfect.
So that
Perfect.
is. So we had one question I saw. Is the network as code available to third parties? Can you ask for it? How does that work?
What was that? The network?
Yeah, what you done when the network is code? Is it available?
We did. So we.
No. I'm sorry, it's a good answer, but yeah, the stuff you've done network is code platform. Is it available for everyone, or what do you do?
So yeah, certainly any of the interface and APIs we're exposing, we're contributing back into Kamara. Want to make those available. As far as like the applications, those sort of things are more reference implementations. We provided our members, and it's more southbound, but certainly can discuss. Of making any of the POCs we've done available.
Great. Anyone else has questions? Ask them very quickly because we have 2 minutes left. Or I will just go to the next speaker, which is Jan. Jan, are you ready? Or are you? Yes, you are here.
I am ready. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Hi, Magnus.
So, Jan, you are Business Development Director at Broadpeak, and we'll be talking about quality on demand for streaming. So I'll just give you the floor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. And good afternoon, good morning, everyone. So I'll go through one use case where the quality on demand API is nicely used. I'd like to maybe start with a short video for you to understand rapidly what this use case is all about. So let me share my screen. I hope I can share the sound as well. I'm not able to share the audio. Let me see whether I can change that. Maybe it more. Just bear with me 1 second. I'd like to share the audio of the video as well. Trying to find where it is. Okay. Okay, I don't find the option now. Sorry about that. Okay, then there won't be any audio, but there will be captions anyway, so.
This comes most of the time at a price. And all the video quality at longer startup times, the video is freezing altogether in lower-case scenarios. Peak is testing a solution which integrates a quality-on-demand network API into its streaming software. Using Microsoft Azure programmable connectivity and Deutsche Telekom's network API capabilities, Peak streaming software can request a bandwidth boost from Deutsche Telekom's mobile network when video indicators signal deteriorating conditions. As a result, 4G and 5G users enjoy the highest quality streaming experience, even when network conditions are challenging. And life is light again.
So I hope you had the video at least, right?
We did.
You did, but without audio, right?
We got some audio, but it was like clearly from your speaker and microphone. So like you could hear something, but it wasn't perfect. And I know you wanted it to be perfect, but it was good enough.
Sorry about that. Anyway, I think you got the flavor of it. So yes, the use case here is about 5G streaming, and we're using quality on demand. And what type of problem statement do we have? So there's a non-neglectable part of the traffic, which is of the streaming traffic, which is shifting to the 5G networks, whether this is for smartphone users or fixed wireless access users. And sometimes we can all experience some bad quality of service for different reasons. I mean, usually because the network conditions are challenging. So it could be because temporarily there is I would say a small congestion in the network. It could be because you are in the cell edge, so you have a lower useful throughput. You can also be moving and sometimes be in a poor coverage area. This is for the smartphone users, and of course, when you are a fixed wireless access user and you're streaming, you even want to make less compromise on the quality because you're streaming on a bigger stream. So we thought there is something to do here, and we did actually a proof of concept with two partners. So Microsoft, who is invited as well in this call, and Deutsche Telekom, who was also invited to this call. I think we did a nice trial and also a nice demo at Mobile World Congress earlier this year. So I propose to tell you a bit more about the workflow that we used for this experience. So and how this works. So so we were using content that was originated from France on an origin packager, and streaming this from one Telecom Edge Cloud streaming server instance that was located in Berlin, and we had users in this area. So the way it's working is that you have a 4G or 5G user, so you know how streaming works. You're kind of asking and downloading small segments of video regularly. So what we did is that every time we requested a video segment to the streaming server, we were reporting some information on the buffer status. So BI here. How's the buffer? Is it full? Is it empty? Is it at risk? And we do that using CMCD, which is in the video streaming industry pretty common now, a way to report data from the video player, so common media client data. So we're reporting this information to the streaming server. And then the streaming server was analyzing this buffer status. It could be different criteria, it could be other complementary information on top of the buffer information, but in this case, in this demo, it was the buffer information. And then it was taking a decision to call or not the quality on demand API. So what we did is that when the buffer was below a certain thresholds in terms of seconds, we were calling the API. And then when the buffer was full enough again, we were releasing the API. So we did that using Microsoft Azure programmable connectivity. I mean, acting here as an aggregator, as we discussed before, and Microsoft Azure programmability was, of course, calling the API gateway from Deutsche Telekom, and Deutsche Telekom network was enforcing, I would say, this request to have temporarily a higher QoS on this network connection. I mean, I must say that not only for the streaming service, but this will be a higher priority for any type of application and services running on this radio bearer. And then, of course, we could observe a more stable and then, all in all, a higher quality of experience for the video streaming users. So that was the workflow. We did this experience on other networks. We also did this experience on an Open RAN type of network where we were using the X app basically to enforce what we call the bandwidth boost here. And actually, I can now show you how it worked as well. I mean, in terms of with the image. Let me show you another video here. There's no sound this time, so. And let me share again. Yeah. So, so here we have an example. I mean, a VOD content. So you'll see. I'm stopping now. I'm doing pause. What's important is that so on the left-hand side you have the screen. So the video player of a user that is connected to a network that has this quality on demand capability. And on the right-hand side, you have a user which is connected to a network that doesn't have the QoD capability. So we call it bandwidth boost because indeed, I mean, temporarily when the buffer is exhausted, then we are requesting a boost of bandwidth. So I'm playing the video now, and you will see that on the left-hand side, okay, so we every time we were the buffer was below 4 seconds, we were calling the QED API, and every time the buffer was above 8 seconds, we were releasing the QED API. So sometimes it's very quick because we go above 8 seconds rapidly, and then we go back below 8 seconds. So, but you will see all in all that on the left-hand side, you'll have the API called and then released and then called again. On the right-hand side, you see that the buffer is completely exhausted. So the video is freezing actually. And when we can't have the minimum video bitrate, then we can also observe some pixelization. So what we do here is actually we're helping the adaptive bitrate streaming, which is natively adapting to the bandwidth it has. So you might not know how this works, but the video player measures the bandwidth, and then depending on how much bandwidth it has, it will adapt the video bitrate. Okay, but sometimes it's not enough. And also one of the solution that the adaptive bitrate streaming is having is basically to play with the buffer, to have a very long buffer, to have more security. But for the live, especially for sport, we don't want to have too much latency. So we want to have a quick startup time. We want to have a low latency of a live. So this is why we will try to keep the buffer as small and in time as possible. And this is where QED on quality on demand can help here, because then we can improve the situation and ask temporarily a boost of bandwidth just to make sure that the buffer is always in the range that allows to play the video smoothly. So that's the use case, and I think I can say a few words because I have, unless there are any questions.
I do not see any. I have one question for you here. So for problems with streaming, do you have any idea what the percentage of failures are for congestion versus the percentage of failures due to lack of coverage or capacity?
Yeah, no, I don't this type of statistics. I don't have these types of statistics, and I think it's very random depending on the networks. So unfortunately, no, I don't. But I think this is something that we have all observed, and we are actually we published a paper, a more detailed paper on that, on the different strategies to call or release the QED API. So I know that doesn't answer the question. But
no, yeah, I think it did, right? So it's not that's kind of out of your scope, because you are a video provider, or you help operators do video, and you don't know about the network topology or the network root cause analysis. But do you have any thoughts on what happens if quality on demand does not fix the problem?
Well, I think. Well, first of all, with the first, as I said, there is a first level, which is the streaming, the adaptive bitrate streaming. The way it works, I mean, it natively will, in most conditions, it will work well. Then we kind of give a hand to adaptive bitrate streaming with QED in difficult situations. What will happen is that if you are in a fully congested network, okay, then this won't help, okay? This because then you don't have bandwidth for all the services, all the applications. Everybody is a bit stuck. I think this is a pretty rare situation. But then, QED will not help in that case. So you play with the statistical multiplexing. You bet that some users are well served during a couple of seconds or half seconds, and some other are not. And then QED will be used only temporarily. But if everybody is struggling, then to be honest, I mean, QED will not help.
Yep. Perfect answer. And I guess maybe a good layup for the next speaker, which is Ricardo Villarreal. So you are from Microsoft and you are Cloud and 5G product management. Ricardo, are you there? We can now see you.
I'm
Now-
here. Hi.
Now you're here. You're here.
Can you
We
hear
can
me as
see you.
well?
Perfect. So you will talk about Azure's visions for network-aware application knowledge. Just give you the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let me share a presentation I have. Give me a second. Magnus, can I share with sound? I have a video and it's not giving me the option to share sound. Do you need to habilitate or?
I can try again.
You tried before? Sorry, I was not connected.
I had the same issue actually. I don't know whether there's a question of permission, but it was
You
working.
can try just for a
during
second. No, yeah. If it's not possible, then it's okay. I can speak over the video, maybe.
Perfect. Yeah, please do that.
So okay, so I'll just share then. Give me a second. Yeah, it's still not giving me the option. Okay. Share. Let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see your screen now.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. First, a quick introduction. My name is Ricardo Villarreal. I am a product manager in Azure for Operators. It's a team in Microsoft. We are helping telco operators to build their networks in the cloud. And the product that we are building in my team is called Azure Programmable Connectivity. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more. This product is to capture the opportunity about network APIs. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. You can see my screen, right? Just double checking. It's just.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Excellent. Okay. So let's start with the challenge that we are. I usually give this presentation talking a little bit about what network APIs are. I'm sure that after a couple of hours, everybody understands that very well. So I'm going to skip all of that. I'm going to go straight to a place where I assume everybody understands these network APIs. They know what are the most typical ones and the use cases behind them. So the challenge that we are trying to tackle is for two audiences. So the first audience is the developers, you guys, because this event is for you guys, for developers. I understand there's another event for operators, but the first audience is you. You guys need a seamless, unified experience to infuse your applications with these network capabilities. So basically, a seamless experience to access these network APIs, right, from multiple operators. So that is a challenge for you guys. And then for the telco operators, they are also an audience that we are helping. They need access to the developers' ecosystems, right? So that they will use their network capabilities. So they need access to customers, basically, and in an ecosystem. So our vision, I'm going to show you what we are building, but first is the vision. What is it that we are trying to solve? Is we want to provide this streamlined experience that the developers want. We want to abstract or hide the complexities of using these network APIs. But at the same time, we want to make it easy also for the operators to differentiate their offerings, right? That's the vision behind what I'm going to show you that we are building. So with that, what we are building in order to achieve that is a product called Azure Programmable Connectivity. I'm going to call it APC for short in the following of the presentation. As you can see, so the telco operators offering their network APIs, they are down here. The ones I'm showing here are part of our ecosystem. These are partnerships that we have. Some of them we already have them in a preview, commercially available. Some of them we have made POCs with, and but all of them are part of the collaborations we've been doing since we started, and we are expanding all of these as we speak to other operators. The idea is that we have a very large list of telco operators eventually. So they are here. We are consuming these network APIs, and then all the developers, enterprises, anyone who owns a mobile application that wants to make use of these APIs is up here. So what we are doing here in the middle is basically two things. We are abstracting and we are unifying, right? Which is a little bit attached to the vision that I showed before. So the unification lies in the fact that we consume from multiple networks, multiple network operators, and then we only present one interface to the developer that is going to use it. So that means, as an example, we could consume a device location API from all of them. We consume that device location, but then we just present one device location API for the developer. And then in order to do that, I'm going to show you a little bit more in the next slide, but obviously we would have to do some smart routing. We take it from you, and then we know where to route the API. But for the developer, you only have to write code once, and you only have to access that one device location API from us. And then in reality, you are accessing device location API from multiple operators. That's the unification part. And the abstraction part is everything is presented as an Azure service. And I'm also going to show you a little bit of that. But the way you access this is in the Azure portal. You go to the Azure portal. It's as an Azure service. You spin up a gateway that I'm going to tell you a little bit more about. And then everything is as an Azure service. So you developers, especially developers that are already customers of Azure, they would be using the same tools that they are used to use, right? So that's where the abstraction also comes. We provide SDKs also. So we provide a nice experience for the contracting through Azure, but we also provide SDKs to access these APIs. So let me tell you a little bit more. So as I mentioned, one of the key elements in this platform is an APC gateway that I'm going to tell you a little bit more about. There are many elements to the platform. There's the portal that you can use, where you can contract all of this very easily. There is the SDKs that I mentioned before, and then there is this APC gateway. So this APC gateway is at the heart of the platform. What it does, it manages the credentials so that the developers, they can access all of the APIs. They can make the API calls into the operators. That is transparent for the developer. The developer doesn't have to look at the credentials. They don't have to manage them. All they do, again, is just calling into the API using Azure authentication. So they just authenticate themselves as an Azure developer. And that's the only type of authentication we need. And then we use the credentials on behalf of the developer for that. And then we also do some smart routing. So we know where to send the API, right? You just give us the telephone number, sometimes the IP address, and then depending on the API. And then based on that, we know where to route your API call. So just as a quick example, let's say this is a modern connected application. Let's say this is an online game that is running in Azure. And then the developer, the owner of this online game, they have customers, their own customers. They are using these devices with a client of the game running in the device. They are playing the game and they're connected through different operators. And that's exactly what would happen. This, let's say this, the developer of the online game, they want to improve, let's say the quality. They want to use a quality on demand API. They want to improve the connectivity of this specific, the one I'm highlighting here at the bottom, operator C. They want to improve the connectivity for this specific, I'm checking the time, for this specific user. So they would just make an API call with the telephone number. We would know, okay, this customer is with operator C, so we need to use credentials for operator C to make that API call, and we would enable that call. And that's how it would work. So let me show you, and this is the video that I was talking about. I'm not sure how it's going to work. Let me see if I can actually, I want to show you a demo that I've done before. This one is accelerated, so it was more efficient to show it as, especially for the short time we have. It's a demo of how you can contract this. How is it that you can access the APC in the Azure portal? So give me a second. Let me see if I think it might work. So the first thing you have to do is you have to go to the Microsoft Azure. I just paused the video. Can you guys hear the video?
Yes, we can
hear it. Yeah.
Great. Because what I'm doing is I'm putting my microphone into the speaker. So I'll continue. Portal. There you can find the gateway in different ways. I'm going to start again. Sorry. So the first thing you have to do is you have to go to the Microsoft Azure portal. There you can find the gateway in different ways. You can search for it, APC. You can search Azure Programmable Connectivity that way. So the first thing is you find it, you click on it, you create a new APC gateway. It's going to take you to a series of steps. The first step is going to be to create an APC gateway. You're going to have to choose a subscription, a resource group, and then in which region you want this APC gateway to be running and give it a name. Once you have entered all the information, you click next. And then it is a time to select the APIs that you want to contract. These are the 3 APIs that I mentioned before. Is the initial focus of our product. You can click on SIM swap as an example. You're gonna see a screen with the countries where we offer this. In this preview version that we have it available in Brazil and in Spain. You can see the different operators here, and you can add whatever operator you want. You can see the plan details, the price for each of these. You can browse to a different country and see the plan details. And then you can start selecting them. In this case, I'm going to select them all. Once you have selected them, you can see different rows showing your selections. And you can modify these, you can delete, or you can go back to make any modification. You click next. Here, we have to collect information on behalf of the telco operator that is offering these APIs. They need this information in order to provide these services. Once you have entered all the information, we click on next. And now the next step is you have to agree to the terms and conditions for this. We do this on behalf of the telco operator. These are terms and conditions between the telco operator offering the network APIs and the developer. You gotta click on each one of these. The terms and conditions would be presented as text if provided as such by the operator or as a link that you can check. You have to agree to all of them. The next step is a review and getting ready to create all of the resources. So you can see the basics about the network, the gateway, the APC gateway, the APIs that you are contracting, the organization details, and the application details. If we are ready, we click create. As you can see on the right-hand side, the deployment is being initialized, submitted, and created. The first thing to be created is the gateway. Deployment is in progress. And then the API connections are created. Okay, so with that, I think my time is almost up. Oh, sorry, I went outside here. Let me just, I just wanted to present the, give me a second. Oh, just very quickly, so I mentioned the SDKs. Currently is offered in .NET, C#. Future is going to be JavaScript, Python, or our API can also be obviously called by any language that is capable of invoking HTTP services, the REST APIs, right? This is the focus, initial focus. This was mentioned in the email. I'm sorry, in the video. SIM swap detection, number verification, or device location. And I'm moving quickly because I saw my time is finishing. And then I wanted to present, here you can learn a lot more. You can go to this, to our latest blog. That one has many links also that you can access. You can actually go and see the documentation. And because we're in a preview right now, you have to apply if you want to use it. And this is the link. Sorry, I didn't include a QR code, but this is the link where you can go and apply for the preview. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have time for questions or not. Magnus, probably not. But there are questions. Yeah.
Probably not. If you have any questions to the audience, you can ask it in the QA section, and Ricardo can answer them while typing. Because now we need to get through our next and final speaker for the day. So that is Dario Sabella. So he's chair of ETSI MEC, or Multi-Access Edge Computing. And he also works for Intel. And he wants to talk about MEC standardization perspective and collaboration with open source. Dario, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear and see you. And
okay,
now
fantastic.
steal the screen from Ricardo and
sure. I'm sharing my screen. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I will give you a non-traditional presentation because I believe you may be surprised that if you are a developer.
Just one thing, Ricardo, can you close your screen sharing? Because I can still see your screen.
Okay.
Just doing that. I was looking at the.
Can you see my screen now?
But let me stop. I don't think I'm sharing anymore, Magnus.
Ah, okay.
I don't think I'm sharing. Yeah, I could see.
No, it works. Yeah. Okay, Dario, try again.
Oh, I will try again, and then you can see my screen, hopefully.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay. So this is a kind of non-traditional presentation, I guess, because if you are a developer, you may wonder, what about standard? Why should I care about standardization? You may be surprised that this is a non-traditional standard body, and hopefully with some advantages and goals to address the needs of developers. This was since the creation of ETSI MEC, which I'm having the pleasure of being the chairman. This was really our polar star to address the needs of developers. So we'll give you few pointers. I guess I hope the slides will be available also after the webinar, but I will give you just some pointers, and then maybe you can also consult the slides or ask me later on, because I will just fly over the contents because we don't have the time to see everything. We'll give you just an overview and some activities in MEC which are really targeted to deployment and ecosystem development. Our special focus on this as a standard body on API exposure, and also possible synergies with open source, and some final remarks. So actually, what's MEC about? Yeah, I'm having the pleasure of being the chairman of this very heterogeneous group. The membership is continuously growing. Now we are about I guess 180 companies between big corporations, startups, SMEs, research centers, and also governmental agencies. And it's about multi-access edge computing. It's based on virtualization infrastructure. There are a lot of things to learn if you are interested, but the important thing is that we are focused on applications at the edge. What are the existential questions for developers to deploy those kind of workloads. And we are keeping an open standard approach based on virtualization framework, aligned with other standardizations, for example, with 3GPP when it comes to using 5G network infrastructure. But we are keeping also access agnostic nature. Previously, other speakers asked about what about not only just the cellular network, but also fixed access and Wi-Fi. Yes, MAC architecture standards are supporting as well those kind of other access technologies. And yeah, let me just go over the few slides, but I believe this is a key essential slide I would like to give you to transfer the message. We are not producing thousands of APIs. Everybody seems to talk today about APIs, which is a good thing because indeed this is a very important topic. But as a MAC standard group, we are not standardizing all possible APIs. What you see here is a small set of exemplary implementations and definitions of MAC standardized service APIs, which are meaningful for industrial products from companies pushed by the industry. And we are using RESTful-based HTTP verbs to consider universal language for this API exposure to the application development community. Also, other transports are supported by MAC, brokering messages, and so on and so forth. But the important thing is that the standard is also open to accommodate the possibility to advertise automatically to the platform and make available other additional services which are not intended to be standardized in ETSI-MAC. So the open approach is really to open the market to other third-party companies that may be interested to implement new services that can be exposed on their turn to higher level applications. So that's why I guess you as a developer, you may be interested in two things. One, how can I consume APIs? And maybe why should I care about standardized APIs or open source APIs? Are they in conflict or not? Yeah, let's answer to this question. But also, why should I care about MAC? Because also is possible to expose new services that I can produce as a product from my company, if I'm a software company, and then expose to other applications and for third parties. That's really the advantage of enhancing also the total addressable market for this open approach to expose APIs. So an application can consume services, but also can be a producer of other services for third-party applications. And this is compliant with the standard, as long as you design with the basic principles, that is specification MAC 009 with basic principles for API design. So maybe you are not so much in detail experts about the standardization, but just to give you the background, if you are interested, MAC standard is compatible with 3GPP when it comes to deployment in 5G, and also fully aligned with some assumptions for the Camara architecture, considering as well some API exposure mechanisms like CAPIF, which is also supported by many companies in the ecosystem. So if you are interested, you can have a look to that. This slide maybe can clarify, because as I said before, everybody is talking about APIs. Network APIs are the lower part of, let's say, the value, which is gathered at the edge of the network in our case, and exposed to the upper layer. And Camara work is also intended to not only consider the exposure gateway, but also to implement the transformation function. You can see below the focus of MAC is also to provide for some exemplary implementation of APIs, network APIs. But today somebody mentioned also federation. We are also exposing MAC federation enablement APIs for the east-west bound interface between different operators and stakeholders. And also we are studying guidelines to abstract APIs for industry verticals. So we have in place a collaboration with the Camara open source project, and we have a memorandum of understanding with the Linux Foundation. You have all the information here, but I just wanted to spend a few minutes on some specific activities which are really focused on targeting the developer and application development. So here you can see a working group which is created exactly for this purpose, which is including a lot of activities. First of all, OpenAPI representation of all the specifications that we produce are there and can be consulted open source in the Etsy Forge, in JSON and YAML formats, and also with the Swagger user interface. And you can use these to understand how the standard is built and how there's APIs are working, and also to automate possibly testing and conformance tests. We implemented by some special task forces in Mac or in robot language and TTCN3 languages for automation and testing and conformance test suites. And we have also some pages mentioning what is the list of possible implementations of Mac in the ecosystem, proof of concept, trials. If you are curious, you can have a look to that. But most interestingly, yes, this is the list of POCs and trials, but most interesting for you, I guess, is the Mac Sandbox. If you have a GitHub account or Etsy account, you go there in this try-mac.etsy.org, which is not a product. It's just a tool for you to play with the APIs and understand how they are working and how you, as an application developer, can consume them and utilize that. It's a sort of simulation environment, not of course in competition with any products, but just to understand how those APIs can be consumed from your perspective to build your application. And with this, let's say, simulated environment with 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi access points, moving devices, and UEs, a lot of things, and all the APIs implemented inside this Mac Sandbox. And then you can also add your own API there using the sandbox. Other details. So yes, this is just to give you an overview, but there are a lot of guidelines on how to use that. You can try out, you can instantiate a server. Etsy will instantiate free for you, a Mac server for you, and you will also create a connection between a client application and Mac application, and you will consume some Mac APIs. So for free. And this is also the relationship, as I said, left side, we are producing specifications, PDF files, documents, readable by humans, but we would like also to offer machine readable implementation, open source of the APIs, and also a tool, which is the Mac Sandbox, to try out with this software and understand in practice how this is working. So yeah, you can see here the link and few examples of APIs which are available in the Mac Sandbox, and other tools like complementary tools, podcast episodes to explain parts of the standard and guidelines, wiki pages, and so on, which are also in the Slack channel as well. You see, this is not a traditional work from the standard body, but really what we want to do is also to make something useful for developers. And as I mentioned, the collaboration with Camara is also another asset, not forgetting that we are a standard body and not an open source community, but complementary to this effort in Camara. Why? Because APIs are really meaningful examples for some products, if you have an interest for that. And there are also efforts in Etsy to build, as I said, testing and conformance test suites for that. We are also running hackathons and other events to stimulate meaningful examples of edge applications. some plans for next year, for this year, sorry, OCP Global Summit and a conference in ETSI in November this year. We are running a new special task force to develop further some software plugin called Edge Native Connector, also in alignment with the GPP and Camara and GSMA. So last few words about API exposure as a reminder. As we said, this is really the API era. Everybody is talking about APIs. We are really focusing on network APIs to provide value from the underlying network. And exposure is for us a great effort. We made great progresses to finalize the specifications coherent with the other organizations at the end of past year. Now I can tell you there is a lot of alignment with the 3GPP, CAPIF, and also we are starting more in detail a collaboration with the Camara on this perspective. If you are more interested about API exposure, I can give you the links of MAC 11 specification and a recent webinar on CAPIF, Common API Framework, run together with ETSI-MAC, 3GPP, and OpenCAPIF, which is an open source implementation of CAPIF. And yeah, to summarize, as I said, MAC applications can consume services, but can also offer services. And you can also use MAC Sandbox to understand how MAC service APIs are working. Final remarks in 1 minute, just to give you my message. This is a standard community really targeting the needs of edge application development and stimulate the market on the edge, also providing open standardization to allow third-party APIs, which can be also consumed by other applications. So I believe this is quite important to give value for developers. We are continuing our work. Next, in the future, we have in the plan MAC Phase 4 activities, including even more effort on software-related projects. So, and also continue the collaboration with open source and industry groups. So you are all mostly welcome to join MAC. Even if you are not ETSI member, this is an open community because also open to smaller players. Everybody can join us and impact globally in the standard, depending on, of course, contributions, because it's a standard group, it's a contribution driven. So thanks so much for your attention, and I finished my presentation.
Thank you so much, Dario, and perfect timing as well. Now, what's left for me is to just thank all the participants and the speakers. And final message is we are hosting the second part of this webinar on July 10th, so a bit under a month. Still, it would also be with Camara project. So, but this is more targeted at operators. So we have already a great speaker list, and I think there will be more. So we have Jeff, CMO at Rakuten. We have Kevin Smith, who's done network APIs for 25 years. Paul, who is here today, Dean Publi from Disruptive Analysis. We also have Thomas from Relab. So again, please register to this one as well. And we'll see you there. Keep in mind that everything here was recorded and will be published on understandingnetworkapis.com. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Magnus, for having us.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.